Okay. Well, welcome everybody. Those of you who are here so far. And we'll see. We'll probably get a few more people coming in from Facebook as well. Um, but welcome. And I'm Mary Lee LeBay, and I'm a hypnotherapist and past life regressionist, as well as an astrologer and tarot card reader. And I just want to welcome you here today. Today, we're going to be talking about past life regression and hopefully getting some stories from people here that have joined us about their own experiences with past lives, and we'll get an idea of that. How many people here so far? Hi, Josephine. I see you just joined us. Um, how many people here have experienced a past life? Okay, Cinda, you haven't?
I couldn't decide what to say. I have been told about past lives that I have had, but I haven't actually been able to get myself into a relaxed enough state to feel my own or discover my own. But I have been told about some that I have had.
Okay, that actually brings up a couple of really good points. And one is that when you have somebody else tell you about your regressions, it's not quite as potent. And, you never really know, do they really know, or are they just making up something? I mean, they could tell you anything, right? So, and even if it's true, it may not be accurate. So even though what they say, like I had somebody tell me that I had been a school teacher in the Wild West, and I may have used this example before, but they told me that I was a school teacher in the Wild West, and I learned courage that lifetime because, you know, we were Native Americans were coming over the hill, and I took my shotgun and I killed them. There were four of them, and I killed them. And therefore, in that lifetime, I learned bravery and courage and saved the children. Right. Well, when I did my regression on my own, the, everything he said was true, but it wasn't out of bravery. I didn't, I did it out of fear and terror, and I killed all of them and I saved the children. All of that was true. But the problem was, I don't even know if they were really hostile. Maybe they were coming just to meet us and see what we were doing there. And it turned out one of the Native Americans was my soulmate. So we had the opportunity to meet in that lifetime. And I think true courage and bravery would have been to actually figure out what they were doing before I just killed them, right? I could have stood there with the shotgun, but just waited to see what happened. Maybe we could have had, um, a good relationship between our cultures. And the other thing is that after I did that, I don't know what happened after that, but I would imagine we had a raid on our community. They probably came back for revenge. Um, so the point is, we want to do our own regressions. The other reason why we want to do our own regression is because it's exercising that memory muscle. So, um, that's part of strengthening our consciousness, is strengthening our memories. And so if it's sort of like, I want to get strong in my body, but hey, Jan, will you go to the gym for me and work out and come back and tell me how it was? And I'm sure I'll feel better, right? And so when we have a psychic go, even if it's accurate, we're having somebody else exercise that muscle, and we're still, what I might call, we're being lazy, right? We're not stepping up and doing it. So in Cinda's case, for you, Cinda, also, it's a little bit harder to do your regressions on your own in a natural, normal situation. you know, humans should naturally remember um, our past lives, just like we would remember what we did when we were 15 or 20, or what happened at college, or what happened when we got married. Um, we'd be able to remember those other lifetimes, but for a lot of reasons we forget. And so it is hard to do, especially the first couple of the of regressions, using a guided visualization or doing it in a group, or just meditating and trying to accomplish that. So getting with a really good qualified past life regressionist is going to take you to get you going with that. So, you know, like if you came to me in, you know, a private session, absolutely we would be able to get a past life. I have way too many techniques and methods of getting you there, so that you know, I just don't have a failure in my office anymore. There's, you know, way too many ways of getting it. So then once you've done 2 or 3 lifetimes and really understanding what that feels like, and that's what we're going to talk about today, is what does that feel like? And once you really get that, you know, get that sensation and understand how to get there, then when you use the guided visualizations or try it on your own, you'll be a lot more successful. But your situation is really normal, Cinda, that you've tried, but you're not really sure you're getting there. So having that guide is really going to help. So welcome to a whole more guests. Ooh, we just keep getting more and more people coming in. So, um, so you know, as we start, who does anybody have questions about past lives? So we'll just wait for a few more people to filter in um, before we talk about our next part of this subject. But does anybody have questions about past lives? Um,
I do.
Lisa,
Can you move forward rather than regress in a past life regression?
yeah, we we talk about it as past life regression, so we think of it as moving backwards. But um, and I use that term because it's well known and people know what I'm talking about. But actually, in our inner circle, we call it aspect regression, or aspect, you know, exploring our aspects. So we know now from new physics, from, you know, science is now informing us, they've, you know, figured this out, that all time is happening now, right? So it's, you know, if we think about our incarnations, our our various lifetimes, past and present and future, they're all sitting in what I call a big pool of moments, right? Those time, you know, every moment in time is like a film strip, like a cell on a film strip. It's just a freeze frame, a frame, I guess is what they call it on a strip. So all those freeze frames are just sitting in a big pool. And so our consciousness is moving us through that in a linear fashion, or what we call chronological order, right? So that it feels like, you know, I had breakfast before I came here today, right? So it feels like there's a progression, a logical order that makes it easier for us not to go crazy, right? Which, you know, maybe we do a little from time to time, but so there's that progression. But when we are basically lifting up off of our present moment, you know, and we're going back in time to a past life, we can do the same thing and lift off and go into the future. And then we also know, and this is verified in science, that we have parallel universes, that there are alternatives even to this moment. And so when we are in that state, and we can achieve that in hypnotherapy, when we're in that state, we can also look at those parallels, not only the future and the past chronologically, but also the parallels. So, which comes in handy when we are looking, like if we see the future and we say, I don't like that future. I don't like where this is going. We can lift up, and then we can, I mean, lifting up is really, just a term to get a sense of it. It's not like we're lifting up, but we can come out of this particular perspective, and we can look at those parallels. We can say, if we change this just enough, we can have this other outcome. And so then, you can look at what that outcome is, that, the desired outcome. And then you can trace it back and say, okay, these are the things that need to, these are the decisions I need to make, or maybe actions I need to take that will get me onto that parallel universe, or that parallel aspect. And you can pull yourself over there. We're actually doing that a lot in our lives anyway, moving between these parallel versions of ourselves. Whenever we're making a really strong decision that is not on this line, like, okay, I've decided to move to Louisiana or something. I don't know, you just pick a place. It's like, wow, that was not on the line here. That was not what this was all about. And you do it, then obviously your whole future is going to be different, right? There's going to be a whole lot of things that have changed. But a lot of those changes also come by changing our character, changing the way we perceive the world, changing our values and adhering to it, changing our morals and how we act them out. But making a deep change where that is, now I'm a different creature, because now I'm not the person that does that. I'm the person that does this. So does that help you, Lisa? I can't hear you, but
Yeah, that makes sense.
okay. So what's interesting about that, about the parallel universes, and if you want more information about that, you can either read the book or watch the movie called The Elegant Universe by Brian Greene. I highly recommend him, and I highly recommend the movie, actually. It is so beautifully done. I saw it originally on, what is the public television?
Channel 7. Channel
I don't-
7,
I don't know what the channel,
PBS.
PBS.
yes, PBS, thank you. And
I
actually,
love that channel.
yes, and it was one of those telethon things, and we actually purchased it at the time, and the money goes towards supporting the station, I guess. But it's, to me, it was worth buying so that I could watch it over and over again. And then also when I would have live classes, sometimes I would put that on, like at the lunch break or something, and people could eat their lunch and watch this movie.
What was it?
The Elegant Universe by Brian Greene. Really worth watching. And of course the book is good, but the visuals, it's done like a full scale movie. It's really done very beautifully.
I'm sorry, who's the author again? Sorry.
Brian Greene. Yeah. And I think Green might have an E at the end. I think it does. Brian Greene with an E. Anyway, so yes, so one of the interesting things, once we understand this concept of multiple universes and parallel universes, one of the very fascinating things that I have developed in the field of past life regression is going back to, in fact, I teach it in the trainings as well, going back into other lifetimes and actually changing the aspect there. So we can actually go back and change the past through this technique. Now we have to be very, very careful, very selective about doing that. And it has to be worth the changes, because imagine if, if you think of these parallels and you jump over to this other parallel and you've changed the past, that means that pretty much everything that is along that line now between that lifetime and this lifetime has changed, because having a different past would obviously end up with a different future, right? And you are part of the future, the you that's here in this consciousness, in this moment in time and space. So fascinating things. This is definitely advanced material. This is not past life 101 stuff. But Lisa, did you have another comment?
It's about like when people have a memory lapse or lose their memory about who they are, and they have a different character and a whole different personality, and it's totally different. I'm thinking it's a lot along that same lines.
Like in the middle of a lifetime?
Like, when they get a head injury or something and they forget who they are and what their life was about, and they have a whole different personality or character. I'm thinking it might be similar to that.
I would hesitate to generalize that that's what happens always. Certainly it could be that there is a disorientation. Obviously, when there's a physical issue that has happened, we have to take that into consideration too, that it could just be physical. But it could be that they are, accessing a parallel, of course, or another thing that could happen, which is a little bit off of our topic here, is that they could have a step in. So the person who had the injury, their spirit actually would leave their body. It's like, I'm ready to get out of here anyway. I don't want to go back there. And another spirit says, wait a second, I'm willing to go through the recovery phase just to get a body, and I'd like to continue living on in that body. So it actually could be a different spirit that comes in and takes over the body.
So when you would go back into a person's history, you would probably do that for something really traumatic like child abuse or something more horrifying in their past life. That would probably be the reasons. I mean, why would you go back and alter their history if it weren't for something really serious, like maybe they were murdered in a past life or traumatically abused? But I'm seeing, as you say, that would alter their personality. Maybe you would go back in a way where they actually did live the experience, but would be able to have more acceptance for it and understanding about it.
Right. I mean, we don't just go in and change all of the events, but we can examine them and certainly desensitize some of the trauma. In cases of addictions, oftentimes we can communicate between the person here and the person there. My client in the present time and space and their past life counterpart. Oftentimes with addictions, we'll see addictions in several different lifetimes. So we go into those lifetimes and we find a way for them to, even though they have whatever abuse or trauma or disappointment or whatever that leads towards, turning to alcohol or drugs or whatever, we find a way to make that softer, like smooth that over, or maybe help them to find other means, other ways of dealing with those emotions, so that they don't set up that addictive behavior within the soul, within the consciousness. And so we can go in and soften that in all those lifetimes And then when we're working with the addiction in this lifetime, they're not being pulled down, or pulled back towards the addiction by all these other lifetimes that are supporting the addiction, right? That goes away. And now dealing with the addiction in this lifetime becomes really easy because now we're just dealing with one life, if that's what you mean. But yeah, we don't necessarily go in and change. In some cases I have, and we don't do this with every regression either. And it's also the choice of the client, because even in terrible abuse situations, they find the strength and the character that was built out of that experience. And when given the choice, many times my client will say, I won't give up that abuse or that trauma or that experience, because I don't want to lose the lessons that I had because of it. Many other things may have come out of that that were important. And so it's always, the client's choice. But, because I have a lot of experience, I can also help them to see what all those choices are, and what, it's sort of like leafing through those parallel universes. Okay, here's the universe, or here's the aspect field where where you were raped and killed. Okay, so here's the one where you were only raped but not killed. Here's the one where, well, maybe you were molested but not raped and killed. Here's the one where life was just hard, but that never happened. And here's the one where life was really easy, right? I mean, like, there's all these variations, but we can follow those. What did you learn? What came out of that? How were you changed and impressed? What happened in your soul? What, how did that affect you, right? And we may look, and one of the more difficult ones may actually be the preferred one, because they needed the energy or the lesson or whatever that impact was. So, when I'm working with clients and they're telling me about, terrible experiences in their past, it doesn't frighten me, and it doesn't, it's not alarming to me. It's just like, okay, well, that's pretty juicy. Now, what are we going to do with it? We don't want it to adversely affect you, or have that be how you identify. I'm an abused person. No, you're not. You're a whole person who was abused, and we need to separate that, and we need to take whatever is good out of it, right? And then let go, right? Let go of, that was a moment in time, and that doesn't have to be what my whole life is or what my future is. But we do that in past lives as well as present life. Does that answer your question, Lisa? Those are good questions.
It does. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. But we do have to be really careful about that. So, how we handle that. But that's part of what we do in the training. Jan, do you have a question? Or I'm sure you do.
I was just thinking of a client that I regressed. Her mom brought her in. She's 16 years old and very fearful of men, and not abused at all in her family of origin. There's been no men that have ever done anything to traumatize her. And she said, I'm at my last resort. Can you do a past life regression with her? And I said, okay. Mom's sitting there. I've got permission. So I regressed this girl. She went right back to a past life. She knew all the details of this life. She's like, I know who I am. This is what I look like. This is how old I am. This is what's happening to me. She was being tortured and stalked by her boyfriend, who finally kidnapped her and killed her. And it was quick. She summed it up in 15 minutes. She's like, my name was Levi. I was 25 years old. I had red hair. I was thin. My boyfriend hurt me. Then he killed me. And then we were done. Like, she just, and then I had her. So this is what I did, Mary Lynn. I want to make sure it was okay. I had her go to Levi. I said, I want you to come back to her from your present self, go back into that scene, pull her out of the room before she's killed, sit down with her. Where does she feel that negative energy, that trauma in her body? And she said, I feel it in my stomach. And I said, okay, pull it out. What do you see? And she said, it's a knife. And I said, is that knife beneficial to you? Do you want to keep that knife? And she said, no, this is my fear. I want to get rid of it. So we put it in a fire pit and it burned up and disappeared. And then we brought in the ball of white light, filled her up. And then I said, if you want to take Levi to your safe place and keep her safe from now on, you can. And she said, I want to. So she took her with her to her safe place. And then I brought her up, and her and her mom left and had a long conversation after that. And I'm hoping by having that, session with her, that she feels now empowered to just move forward without having to be afraid of men. And I haven't seen her since, and I haven't really checked in with mom yet about that, because I'm still working with mom and her own stuff. But
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, it would be interesting to hear, what happens.
I will keep in touch. Yeah.
Yeah, good work.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love working with young people like that because they're so in tune with their imagination.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had a few clients like that too, and they just go into it, and the visuals are all there, and yeah.
Yeah.
it's really
They're not
fun.
shut down yet. They haven't been told that's crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. That's not real.
Yeah.
It's still
Yeah,
right there and fresh, and they believe it. And I was really happy that happened.
yeah, very good, very good. So again, has anybody else? I know Jan has done a lot of past lives, and I'm going to talk with her in a second. Anybody else have you done a past life? Because I'd like to have you share what your experience was in the process, like not necessarily the content of what happened in the lifetime, but like how does it feel, and you know what is your experience of actually doing that? Anybody? Or should we go to Jan? Nobody here.
I
huh?
did it with you.
Oh,
You sent me an audio and I did it with you. And I had that experience I talked to you earlier about. I moved forward instead of regressed.
oh,
And I got a lot of revelation, but it was kind of weird. And I thought, well, maybe I'll share it with you, but I haven't. And then I sat and wrote about it. I wrote about everything that stood out to me. And I thought, wow, this is really interesting and amazing. And I wondered if it had something to do with the things that I had been studying previously, because I came out with some weird stuff. But then again, it kind of made sense to me. And it's interesting because the spiritual things will often align with things that aren't so spiritual, or to some people wouldn't think that they're spiritual, like card reading or astrology or some of those other things. But they all kind of line up the same. And they all, I don't know, it was really weird. I'd have to share it with you, I guess, but it seemed like a revelation to me, It
yeah.
was, I got some good stuff from it.
Oh, that's awesome. Is there any like a short piece of the revelation that you want to share, knowing
Well,
that it's out here in the public?
astrologically, we have 12 lives, right? We go through each astrological sign and we live that
I'm not
spirit.
so sure that's true. I
You're
don't.
not sure?
No.
Okay, well, that's what I got from it. And when I've studied astrology, that's kind of what they say. But it
Yeah.
was interesting because
Mm.
if
When-
you lived each life, oh, I'm trying to remember what I said in there. I can't remember. I forgot my thought. I'm sorry.
Well, when I studied astrology back in the 70s, 60s and 70s, we talked about that you go from Aries to Taurus to Gemini, around. And I thought, oh, cool, I'm Aquarius. So, I'm way around the cycle. But the more I do regressions, and you also have to think about the fact that we have an infinite number of different incarnations. I mean, it's not like we have 12 and we're done. And what I have learned for my own self is that I am typically either a Gemini or an Aquarius. I tend to pick those because those resonate with me as a person. a Gemini, Aquarius, Sagittarius. And so, you know, I'm not just going around the cycle each time or anything. And we also are picking lifetimes where, number one, there's a body available. Number two, it's going to put us in a position to be with the people or in the situation that will further our purpose, you know, all of those things. So, you know, it's not like we're going to sit out there and say, well, I can't have that body because I have to wait for Libra to come around or something. So it's not, I know in astrology, there's that progression as though it's part of a soul cycle, like we're developing in that way. But I'm not really sure I would adhere to that, knowing what I know on this other side of, you know, physics and the multitudes of lifetimes that I've explored.
One of the things I got from it was, if you were a spirit that was murdered, or you didn't live out your destiny, maybe you committed suicide or something else happened, that you would be sent back to relive that life again because you took a shortcut, or your life was shortened in some way. You would be sent back to live that life again because you hadn't fulfilled your destiny. So that was one of the things I got from it.
Mm-hmm.
And I also got from it that you would come back and relive that life, like you were just saying, that you would live again and again and again. So I kind of got that same thing.
Mm-hmm. So sent back to reincarnate again by whom? Who would send you back? Who's in charge of that?
I guess spirit, life, the universe, the creator, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah. I don't have any epistemology, which is research. I don't have any research or any experience that would support that belief that somebody sends you back. You can come back into lifetimes. You know, I see it as an embroidery hoop, you know, like we talked about the pool of our moments in our aspect field. And if you think of it like an embroidery hoop, you know, you've got your thread and you can come up in this lifetime and you live it, and then you go back and you're out of a body, and then you can come up anywhere else in that hoop. You know, you can come up, so you could, you know, next life you could go back to the 500s or the 900s, or you could go to 3629, you know, wherever you want to go. You can repeat lifetimes, but what I notice, or what my experience is, and my studies would indicate that if your life was cut short and you didn't complete your lesson, or you committed suicide, your lessons may stay there for you. Okay, so you could come into an entirely different lifetime, you know, like a whole different scene, whatever. But because you didn't learn that, you know, let's say you didn't have any boundaries, and therefore life became very futile, and it, you know, it was harder and harder to live because, you know, you're just, you know, losing yourself because you don't have these boundaries, and then you end up killing yourself, right? Or, you know, whatever reason. So then you incarnate into another lifetime, and you still don't have boundaries. So now you're just kind of repeating that lesson until you get that lesson right and create those boundaries. Or, you know, maybe you choose parents that actually teach you boundaries and you have better examples to follow or something. But with, you know, things like suicide, there's some other problems that occur there as well, because there's a lot of negative influence that will swirl around and be a part of that experience. And so, you know, not good. But yeah, so I would go back and do a little more research on those beliefs. A lot of times when we do meditation, we come up with these thoughts, and great, they're good thoughts, but it doesn't mean that they're absolutely true until you go back and do the epistemology. So I think we talked about this last week, 5 branches of philosophy. First branch is metaphysics. It's what is reality. It's not beyond the physical. It's not anything like that. Metaphysics simply means the study of what is real, what is a thing by its nature, right? Second branch is epistemology. How do we know that, right? What is the research? What's the feedback loop? How are we sure that what we think we know is true? I mean, how many times throughout history did even scientists think they knew something, and then decades later they go back and they go, oh, we weren't quite right on that, or we've learned more, right? So what's the epistemology? How do we know it? The third one is ethics. How do we treat ourselves? Fourth one, politics. How do we treat others at any level, one-on-one, or us to the group, or us to the world or the universe? And then the fifth one is aesthetics. How do we express that through art, especially concepts that aren't an actual object? How do we convey the idea of love or freedom or liberty or independence or any of these kinds of thoughts that don't have an object to go with it? So just do a little more research on that. But anyway, but thank you for sharing that, because you actually had a really good experience, but I would just say, go back and study the results.
Yeah, I did study. I looked up a whole bunch of stuff. I had coat of arms in there, and I had doors in there. I had a whole bunch of stuff in there. It was a really interesting experience.
Yeah, cool.
But
there's
I don't know.
much to learn. I mean, there's just so much to experience in the past lives as well. Jan, you've done a lot of regressions, and what can you tell us about what it's like to experience a regression?
Well, I learned everything from you, and I've had most of my past life regressions from you, but the most important one for me that has really changed my life was Mary Lee hypnotized me, and I went deep, and I found myself laying face down in the dirt. Okay, I actually felt the dirt on my face. I was like trying not to breathe it in, but I had to keep my face in the dirt because I was in war. So I was a soldier, I was a man. It was in France, probably World War I, I think. And I could hear the shooting around me. And a friend of mine, a soldier friend of mine, was up doing the shooting, being this brave soldier and everything. And I'm a coward. I don't want to be there. I don't want to fight. And I'm hiding. I am literally in the dirt, avoiding getting shot and killed. And my friend dies, and I feel terrible. I feel guilty and ashamed. And, I'm crawling in the dirt. I'm in the bushes now. I'm literally hiding. And I thought, is that real? Do people really do that? And I thought, why wouldn't they? If you don't want to be there and you don't want to die, you could hide, who would know? But that's what I did. And I felt terrible about it. And then you took me to the next significant event, and I found myself going home to my family, and I had a wife and I had 2 kids, and they're standing at the door of the house, and they're like, Daddy's home. And I'm like, I don't want to be here. I did not want to be in that relationship. I didn't want to be with that woman. I didn't want to be a dad. I didn't want any of that responsibility. And I ran off to Italy, and I became a womanizer and a drunk. And that's how I ended my life. And what Mary Lee does for us when she hypnotizes us is she'll ask you, and that woman, is that someone you know in your lifetime today? That soldier, is that someone you know in your lifetime? Well, the soldier was my first husband, and the woman is my current husband. And the children were my children now, but they were different genders. And the lesson that I learned from that lifetime was I left that woman in World War I, abandoned her, and left her to raise those kids on her own. Can you imagine what that was like for her? I had no idea. I didn't care. I'd left, and I was going to do my thing. The man, the soldier, Scott, is my husband, and this was my husband in this lifetime, brought me into the relationship, and then abandoned me, left me out to become a single woman in this lifetime. So I would have that karmic retribution in my mind. That's what it was, to understand what that felt like for her to be left alone. Now I'm a single mom with 2 kids and I have to figure it out. I'm on my own. I have no money, no child support, no education. I had to figure out how was I going to raise these kids. So I pushed myself through college and got myself into a position of self-sufficiency. And after I had that past life, and I said, okay, Scott set me up to have this lifetime so that I would have the experience of repairing it and becoming who I am today. So I actually wrote a letter to my ex-husband and thanked him. I said, of course, he doesn't believe in any of this. I didn't mention anything about our past life. I just said, I just want you to know that I am so grateful for the opportunity you gave me to learn how to be self-sufficient, because I have helped hundreds of other women now like myself. And I know that it wasn't our path, our dream to get divorced and have an unhappy marriage, but I'm sorry for whatever I did. And I'm thankful for the opportunity you gave me to be who I am today. And that released all the balls and chains of resentment and anger around my feet. And I admire him. I still think of him as that soldier, So for me, it was very real, very, very real going back and being that soldier in that lifetime and understanding that you can go to war and not fight. You can actually not want to be there. And it's okay. Who wants to go be a fighter and kill people? Like, it's okay. I understand now anybody that's ever said I hated it and I don't want to be there and the trauma associated with it. I get it. I felt it. Like, this is horrible. But it really changed my life because it gave me permission to be okay with all the experiences I've had in this lifetime. That was a very important lifetime for me to see and understand.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
There's another one that I remember with you, and you don't have to tell it or not, but where you went back into the womb. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I do remember that. And I loved being in there and I did not want to come out. And I said, if they want me to come out, they're going to have to pull me out by my feet. I was like at the top of the wound with my feet. Oh,
just to let them know we went to just before this lifetime.
yeah.
So this is her in the womb.
Yeah.
Before she becomes Jan. So go ahead and tell the rest.
I'm like all tucked up in the uterus and I don't want to come out. And they said, if they want me to come out, they're going to have to pull me out by my feet. And they did. I came out breached, face up. They're literally pulling me out of the womb. And I could not, my mom even told me, she goes, that was a hard birth and you did not want to come out. I said, I didn't. I did not want to come out. I liked being in there. I didn't want to be born.
And I remember you didn't know that at the time. And then you asked your mom and she confirmed that you were breached.
Yes, breached.
So you didn't know that until after.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really cool. That was such a good confirmation that was true, what you experienced was
and
true.
I've taken people back to in the womb and they remember conversations their parents had. They know how their mom feels about them. So when I worked in the WIC office with the pregnant women, I'd say, be really mindful about how you feel and how you talk to your baby, because they are aware of this situation that you're in, and just be kind and just try to be loving and just be at peace with it and just send good energy towards your baby and try to have a stress-free life,
I wish I had been doing this before I had my children, because, just everything that I've learned since then is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
So I just want to ask if anybody else has a comment or a question about, what to expect if you do a past life or anything like that. We'll kind of wrap it up for today, but I want to answer any questions that you might have about past lives or the experience. No, everybody's kind of got.
I think that's a good question. What can you expect? I think that's a good question.
Oh, okay. Well, just kind of the quick rundown on it is that a lot of people come into the experience expecting the IMAX experience with the surround sound and everything. And that's not always the case. Now, some people, they can jump right into it and they are there and that's, they're just on a roll. And other people, it's more like getting just a snapshot here or a sensation there. And then, you know, as they keep going, it starts to kind of fill in like, oh, I see myself doing this, and then that's it. And then over here, okay, now I see myself doing this. And, you know, those are separated events. So each person is going to be different. It will depend heavily on your sensory modality, that is your typical sensory modality. And, you know, we have the 5 typical senses of the physical body, but we remember things frequently through visual, auditory, kinesthetic, which would be emotions and sensations. Of course, there are some people who will remember through scent, you know, through olfactory and taste, perhaps. But the 3 that we normally see in regression are the visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, and probably mostly visual and kinesthetic. So people who are visual are going to have probably the easiest time because they will have the pictures, and hopefully even more like a movie where they're moving through things and they can, oh, there's my house, it's white, or it's this little stone cottage, and, you know, and they're really seeing things like that. Where people who are kinesthetic are probably going to have the feeling first, like, well, I'm feeling really apprehensive, and now it feels like I'm running and somebody's chasing me. And so we have to capture that feeling and then kind of build it back. Like, okay, if that were happening, what do you know? You know, why is somebody chasing you? What do you know about that experience? And oftentimes, even with kinesthetic, once they get into the feeling or the sensation, they'll start getting the flash of the picture kind of quickly after that. So first the sensation and then the pictures, where visual people, you know, might have a lot of visual, but feel even maybe separated, where they're not having the emotional connection or the physical connection to that experience. Um, uh, we have to use the imagination, and a lot of people have been programmed to think that imagination means it's not true. You know, when we're little and you're, you know, you are making up stories, or maybe you're remembering things and mommy says, oh, that's just your imagination. That's not real. Just go along and play outside, right? Which is really a shame, because that imagination is everything. It's how we remember, it's how we recall things, it's how we communicate to each other, it's how we understand communication. And it's also, you know, obviously creativity, but we are going to access that imagination when we're accessing the memories of past lives. And because we don't have the scrapbooks, and our moms, you know, our parents didn't talk about those memories growing up, and we don't have a picture album, it's really hard to know, did we really, you know, is this true or not? One of the most common things that I have in my office when I've taken somebody through a regression is they say, you know, they come out of it and then they go, well, I think maybe I just made that up, right? So it will feel like that. So even if you feel like you're making it up, just go through it. Just keep allowing that to come. And then go back and do that lifetime a few times. Go back into those memories, because we even know that when we go back, you know, maybe you went on vacation with a family member, and then you're talking about it years later, and they have this, you know, a very different impression of what happened on that vacation, or they have memories that you didn't remember, and you have memories that they go, wow, I just don't remember that happening. And so, you know, it's the same way. Now we're going to go back 500, 1,000 years, and we need to go back many times, and we need to take a look at that and build that out and keep remembering. And the more you remember of it, the more that will flood in. So it's sort of like creating a crack in the wall of a dam, right? And all your memories are stored back there, and you start cracking that open, and pretty soon more and more memories will start flooding through, and it'll become easier to access them. So I've done lots and lots of regressions since the mid 80s. And now it comes really quickly for me. And in some circumstances, it's almost immediate. Like I was in Ireland a few years ago, and I could just sit there and have just floods of lifetimes, or I'd run into somebody at the bar, you know, that's working at the pub. And it was like, oh my God, I remember them from another lifetime. You know, I remember these other situations. And so it starts coming a lot easier once you crack that dam open and start letting that flood through.
Mary Lee took a group of us to Machu Picchu in Peru. And we
Yeah,
did past life regression up on Machu Picchu. That was fascinating. Most
that
of
was
us remembered being there when it was a vibrant, thriving community. It was,
yeah.
yeah,
I loved that trip. That
trip.
was so great.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah. And I took people through Southeast Asia, and we did a trip through Italy, and we've done a trip through Ireland. So yeah, but you went on the Machu Picchu one with me. That was so cool. But I think that's mostly what you'll experience. It does feel a little different in the beginning when you first go into a regression, especially if you're not real seasoned with it. It'll feel like you're up here in your analytical mind. And for me, I can actually feel different parts of my brain activating. So it feels like I'm up in here, like I'm making it up. But even if you start to make up a true story, right? You just make it up and you go, okay, I was in the Wild West and I can feel myself walking on the wooden sidewalk, and there's a mercantile here to the right. I think I'll go in there and check it out. And so, you know, you feel like, okay, I'm just making this up and I'm walking along. Oh, I'm a woman. I have a long dress on. Oh my God, it's so hot. And actually, I feel really dirty, awful, you know, because of all the dust and everything, you know, and you start to kind of build it out. Well, after maybe 5 or 10 minutes of that, maybe even less, you can start to feel that there's a different part of your brain activating. It's like back deeper in your memories, and almost, for me, almost in the gut, where then I go, okay, why am I in this store? What am I doing here? And then, you know, I kind of go in and check myself. Am I buying something? Am I showing up for work? Am I running an errand for somebody else? Like, why am I here? And then you start kind of picking and choosing. Oh, it feels like, no, I'm looking at the material to buy some material to sew a dress, you know, and then you start kind of piecing it together. Am I here alone or with others? Oh, I think I have 2 children with me. It's a little blonde girl and a little darker haired boy, and they're kind of trailing around and getting into things, and I have to keep, you know, getting them to not mess up the store. And so you'll just start building this and let it go. So then if I do this, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 times, I can start to say, oh yeah, I was making the dress for somebody else, and this is who that person is, and this is their relationship to me. And so I start learning more about it. But even, you know, so, I mean, how many lifetimes did I do that? I mean, it could have been a dozen lifetimes that I lived in a place that was very similar, where I did a very similar thing. So it could branch out into different lifetimes. For instance, when I was in Ireland, we were in a wonderful little town. Um, ah, not Kinsale, Kenmare, where there's a really nice stone circle that, you know, you can just walk up and touch the stones. It's just sitting there on the edge of the town. And when we were there, I realized I had had about 27 lifetimes there, you know? So, you know, I'd have all these memories, but then I'd have to filter out, you know, which memories go with which lifetime, because lifetimes were very short. And like in a century, I could have had, you know, 10 lifetimes, one where I only lived to be a toddler, one where I got to be, 25 or 30, which would have been old back then, right? And you could do that a few times. And there'd be reasons why you would continue to come back with those same people in the same situation. And then you start moving out to other times and places. But so, you could even make up the story in the beginning. Oh, I think I was, um, you know, um, somebody in this time and place, just if you have a sense of, oh, I always thought that I was this person, I always thought that I would have been, I had a client, for instance, he always thought he was a cowboy in the Wild West. And I might have told this story to some of you who were here. So I won't go into the whole thing, but so I just said, well, start making up the story, and so, oh, I'm riding, I'm out on the prairie, I'm riding. And then as he built the story, he realized that he wasn't a cowboy, he was a Native American. And so from what he was making up, switched to memory, and the memories, now he was really connecting with the memories. And so there were surprise, we're looking for surprise information or an emotional connection to those memories, which helped to verify that they were probably pretty accurate. But it's real important that we don't get hung up on accuracy. Like it's, well, I'm not going to, unless I know absolutely for sure that this is what's true, I'm not going to go any further in this regression. Well, then you're just not going to go any further, that you're going to get stuck. And instead have the attitude of, I'm just going to go and, whatever comes to mind, I'm just going to go with it, right? And then you just keep allowing it to happen. And there you go.
And use your favorite tool, the analytical imp, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just get that analysis out of the way,
Yeah.
right? Just ask that analytical part. And that is important, that you don't stop and analyze at every moment. Just go through the whole experience. And at the end, then go back and say, oh, well, what did that mean? Or what did I learn? Or what was happening? What is the message? But if you stop and do that, you're switching from the right brain to the left brain, and it just stops the process. So a lot of times I say, just imagine that you're watching a movie or you're going through the movie that you've never seen before. So just, you don't have to stop and analyze it at the time. You can analyze the movie afterwards. Right now, you just need to be in the experience.
Just be free. And then what helps me a lot too is once they get past the point of, is this real or not? And they're going to use their imagination. Then at the end, Mary Lee, when you ask them and, rise above your body, you look down upon your death and you understand the lesson learned in that lifetime. That's always interesting. If they haven't believed it this whole time, and then all of a sudden they have this lesson that they've learned, and how's that relevant to you today?
Yeah. And it's almost always relevant.
Yeah.
I would say 100% relevant to who you are today.
Yes.
But yeah, that's a good, if you're with a therapist, not everybody here is a therapist, but if you're with a therapist, then they can kind of guide you through that piece too. Wait until you've died in that lifetime and then go back and you can look at it. Even within the meditation, you can go back, in that trance state and take a look at what did you learn, what were the lessons, and take a closer look at it then.
Yeah.
Any other questions for today? We're starting to run out of time. Yes, Josephine.
So what if the past life is very traumatic and violent? Do you really need to go back there and suffer through that again before you can move on?
Well, hopefully you're with a therapist when you do that, or you're brave enough to experience it then. Well, everybody will have their own opinion, but for me, that traumatic past life is going to play into who you are at a subconscious level. So it will create phobias or pain or personality quirks or whatever. So it's already operating on you. And so you can go back and recall those traumatic experiences without going through the pain itself. Just like if you broke your leg when you were 10, you can think about it and go, wow, I broke my leg at 10. And I remember how painful it was. And I remember I was hobbling around in a cast, but it doesn't mean that you're going to be in that full excruciating pain the whole time you remember it. It's just like, oh, it's just a fact now that you remember that.
And Mary Lee has something called the theater method, where you can have them imagine they're watching this on a screen. So they're separate from the past life, having the experience of being tortured or murdered or whatever. And that's really helpful because they can see it like it's a movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's if you're with a therapist
You're
who's
with
trained that has all these different techniques to do that. However, I will confess that I had a young man come in for a regression. He was 19. His mother bought him a regression for Christmas. And he came in, and opening scene, she was actually in the room with us. And so we're both there, and he's going through this regression. And opening scene, he's in all this pain and he's moaning, and he says, I'm a Native American woman and I'm squatting down and I'm delivering a baby. And he's in all this pain and all this, and his mom was there. So I was like, oh, and how does that feel? What else are you experiencing? And
Take the moment with that labor. Feel
just-
it.
yeah, right. Oh, how is that? Right. And he's going through this whole labor thing. And I only kept him there for about a minute or two. And then I brought him out and I said, I said, okay, move past that till, you've given them, you've delivered the baby and you're feeling good. And, now how is it? So we went from there. But afterwards I said, you are probably the only man on the planet, when your wife delivers your child later on, when you have a family, you're probably the only man on the planet who could say, I know exactly what that feels like. I've gone through it. Right. So, and I thought maybe he'd appreciate his mom a little better, but experiencing the pain, there's nothing wrong with that, having a little bit of pain. And, in this case of labor pain, hey, women are going through this all the time. It's not like, you're being filleted and tortured in some other way. This is a natural experience. And he was actually glad that he had the experience. He said, oh my God, this is, obviously an experience that I would have never had any other way. So, and that's the beauty of doing regressions, is we get to have experiences we don't get to have any other way. I think I've shared in this group before that I had a very strong, very visceral experience of dying in childbirth when I was in Ireland. And just, in the middle of childbirth, just lifting off the body and floating up and watching the scene below me, knowing I was dead and the baby lived, and I was totally at peace. But it's completely clear in my head what it feels like to die in childbirth now. And you can't have that experience and live to talk about it, but you can if you do it in a past life. So, this broadening of our experience and this richness is, the big benefit of doing this regression work. So I need to get going. Any other questions before we close for today?
What's your topic next Wednesday?
Probably a different aspect of either hypnotherapy or past life regression. I haven't quite figured it out yet, but I know you're going to want to be here.
Of course.
But put your questions. You can email me your questions, or you can put them in the chat, or you can put them on the Facebook page, and we will I will answer your questions in any of the calls moving forwards. So Anyway, so goodbye. Thank you. We'll see you next Wednesday at noon. And I appreciate that all of you have been here with us today. And oh, I do have a message. Let me see. Having trouble getting down there. I don't know why. That's weird. Oh, my screen. Okay, I can't get to it, but I think she just said goodbye. Oh, there you go. Thank you. Oh, good. Thank you, Josephine. Yeah, she said, thank you so much. And she really appreciated it. Thank you. Well, I appreciate all of you being on the call today and in each of the weeks. And I look forward to seeing all of your beautiful faces again next week.
Thank you, Marilee. We love you so much.
Oh, thank you, Danny.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.